While the men of the South may view it as an undifferentiated land of barbarity and chaos corruption, Norska is as culturally varied as the provinces of the Empire and dukedoms of Bretonnia. The people that live closer to the Shadowlands of the North, such as the Varg, Greylings, and Acelings, are everything the Southerners say they are. Bloodthirsty savages, their only goal in life to spread death and misery for their dark gods. The people of southern Norska, however, possess a more nuanced culture. When chaos waxes strong and the winds of magic blow fiercely out of the north, they too don their reaver helms and test their steel against men and elves alike. When chaos is banished back to whence it came, however, these southern Norscans are more than happy to visit the major cities of the Old World as traders, rather than raiders. Amongst them are the Bjornlings, a loose confederation of Norscan clans renowned for their skill as merchants and explorers, even more than their skill at arms. The Bjornlings inhabit the southwestern coast of Norska, overlooking the junction between the Sea of Chaos and the Sea of Claws. This mountainous land, known as the Bjornling Coast, is assailed by ferocious storms year-round. Dragon ogres delight in the lightning-racked mountaintops, and many of the beasts can be found here. Across Gloomrack Strait, mist-shrouded Albion is practically within reach, and the open ocean lies beyond that. Many Bjornling settlements are built on the coastline, and this has greatly influenced their culture. They are exemplary seafarers and fishermen, even for Norscans, and the best longships in the north are built at Bjornling shipyards. Their dragon-headed prows can regularly be found plying the waters around Erengrad, Marienburg, Liangwil, and Nordland. Many Bjornlings possess an insatiable wanderlust, and their greatest heroes are explorers, rather than blood-stained conquerors. The legendary reaver Eric the Restless, later known as Eric the Lost following an unfortunate foray into the Great Ocean, sailed around the coasts of Bretonnia and Estalia to explore Araby and the Badlands. Eric even made forays towards the elven realms of Ulthuan and Nagaroth, though if he ever reached these shores is unclear. His son, Lost Ericsson, is even more famous than his father. As a young mariner, Lost Ericsson mapped the misty coast of Albion before sailing even further afield. He was the first man from the Old World to set foot on the continent of Lustria, an act that earned him the respect of even Imperial and Telean sailors. The Bjornling mariner went on to found the colony of Skeggi, the only human settlement to survive the dangers of Lustria to the modern day. The legacy of Eric and Lost Ericsson lives on, and today, Bjornling merchants and reavers can be found as far afield as Ind, Cathay, and Nippon. Befitting their relative distance from the Chaos Wastes, the Bjornlings are the least chaotic of the Norse people. They still worship the dark gods, but Bjornlings view them as inevitable powers to appease, rather than objects of adoration. They'll still offer prayers to the Blood Wolf, the Crowfather, Wanton Chornal, and the Great Schemer, but the ruinous powers are anything but beloved. That doesn't stop the Bjornlings from calling upon their strength, however. Bjornling longships are routinely infused with the blessings of the dark gods, and an arc of standing stones enchanted by Tzeentch emerge from the western waters off the Bjornling coast. Known as Chenheld's monoliths, these structures supposedly protect against the predations of Dark Elf corsairs, though results are mixed. The Bjornlings also worship southern deities, and it's not unusual to hear them invoke Tal, Ulrich, or Das in their day-to-day life. Gods of the sea are particularly revered, and they'll offer prayers to Manon, Stromfels, Myrmidus, and even particularly famous priests in return for safe passage on the open water. Considering how much time the average Bjornling spends at sea, this is merely good sense. It's generally considered unwise to alienate anything that could save you from one of the frigid ocean's frequent storms. Uniquely amongst the Norse, the Bjornlings despise physical mutation. Visibly corrupted infants are hurled from cliffs into the sea at birth. Nearly all of these abandoned babies perish from their injuries or exposure, but some do manage to survive the fall. They are found and adopted by small communities of other mutants that dwell along the coast. The only exception to this rule is the settlement of Fjergard, a fur trade post that honors and respects the skinwolves that call it home. This almost heretical view of chaos has left the Bjornlings with precious few friends amongst their fellow Norsemen. They generally dislike the Greylings to their north, viewing them as wild animals dominated by chaos rather than thinking men. The Greylings, in turn, frequently attack Bjornling villages. Battles between the two groups are ferocious. The Bjornlings are better sailors and have the edge on the water, but grailing ferocity makes them terrifying opponents on land. The Bjornlings have a slightly better relationship with the Scalings to their east, trading goods and accompanying them on reaving parties into the Empire. They do not trust their eastern neighbors, however, as the Scalings are still more bloodthirsty than the mercantile Bjornlings. The capital of the Bjornlings, if such a confederacy could be said to have a capital, is the town of Skjold. Built on a cliff overlooking the Eldegrim Gulf on the Bjornling coast, Skjold is one of the most cosmopolitan settlements in Norska. Runestones, inscribed with the Dark Tongue of Chaos, beseech the ruinous powers for protection, but otherwise it could be mistaken for a rowdy frontier town on the coast of Nordland. Foreign merchants are tolerated here and can ply their trade in relative safety, so long as they aren't obvious marks for thieves and reavers. Even Norse dwarfs can be found at the docks, though they're relatively rare. The current High King of the Bjornlings, Ulfric Grondel, calls Skjold his home as well. Ruling from the King's Hall, Grondel lives on a diet of plunder and trade, much like the people who support him. Currently, however, his reign is troubled. Years ago, he fathered a mutant child. The girl was left to die, as is customary, but she survived, and eventually made her way south to the pirate haven of Sartosa. Along the way, the girl cut off most of her mutations, and took the name Arcanum Saltspite. Saltspite's abandonment left her with a burning hatred for all Norscans, and her ship's cannons have turned countless dragon ships to little more than driftwood. The fact that his mutated daughter is hunting Bjornlings has caused Ulfric no shortage of headaches at court. Worse yet, his ignoble retreat years ago from a monastery populated by skeletal monks has stained his reputation with accusations of cowardice. Now his Jarls circle him like wolves, looking for a moment of weakness where they could rise up and take his place. As far as I'm aware, the end times came before Grondel could be dethroned, but it's unlikely his reign would have lasted much longer if they hadn't. Another notable Bjornling settlement, Iristad, was only a few miles away from the island of Savunum. While Iristad still stands, the island does not. Rather than a natural landform, Savunum was a massive demon of Tzeentch that despised the chaos-shy Bjornlings. Unaware of its true nature, the Knights of the Blazing Sun built a chapter house on Savunum to better oppose Norse piracy. Unfortunately, the Demon Island had corrupted the Knights of the Blazing Sun dwelling on its shore, hoping to use them to destroy the Bjornlings. They became cruel and twisted, worse than the Bjornlings by all accounts. Only the heroism of the knight Hector Goats and hundreds of brave Bjornling warriors from several settlements saw the knights defeated and Savunum destroyed, though it wasn't without cost. Several Bjornling chieftains, Iristad's chieftain Iri Goldfinger among them, perished in the battle, as did the settlement's Gudja, or shaman, Ulfgar Asgrimdaller. Currently, the Bjornlings only have a token presence in Total War Warhammer 3. In the past, they were part of the Chaos Endgame Crisis in Total War Warhammers 1 and 2, but they now inhabit the Trollfjord minor settlement in the Vanaheim Mountains province. The Total War Bjornlings are led by Snagger the Terror, a character I never encountered in my research. I'm probably missing some obscure White Dwarf article, but it's really disappointing when you have two Bjornling characters, Ulfric Grondel and Iri Goldfinger, who would have been much better faction leaders from the literature. Nonetheless, it doesn't matter all that much. They're one of Wulfric the Wanderer's starting enemies. Thanks to Snagger starting within walking distance of Wulfric and the intricacies of Norscan Confederation, the Bjornlings will likely be subsumed into the Worldwalkers faction before the end of Turn 1 in most games. It's a bit of a shame that such a unique Norse culture disappears so quickly, but someone has to be Wulfric's cannon fodder opponent. May as well be the Bjornlings. It should be noted that Lost Eriksson, the renowned Bjornling explorer, is also present in-game. He leads the Skeggi faction in Lustria. Once again, they're the starter enemy for a legendary lord, this time Lord Mazdamundi. They last a bit longer than the Bjornlings in Norska, thanks to having a few more settlements, but don't get too attached. They'll be eaten by dinosaurs before too long. Finally, the Norscan faction in Arcanum Saltspite's quest battle is known as Skjold Raiders. This suggests that they're Bjornlings, but their leader is named Charon Krakenbite. For those of you keeping track, that's decidedly not Aranes's father, despite the quest battle claiming as much. I'm not entirely sure how that error snuck in, but otherwise the quest battle isn't bad as far as lore accuracy goes. Lots of Norscan marauders and champions, with the occasional berserker or monster mixed in. Pretty good, all things considered. With that, we've come to the end of our overview of the Bjornlings, one of the more fleshed out Norscan cultures. They're great, the kind of culture you want to just pluck out and put into your D&D campaign. I think that's in part because they deviate so much from the usual mold of Chaos Worshippers. Sure, in-game or on the tabletop, the Bjornlings play just like anybody else. Heavy armor, savagery, smash, smash, smash. But in the lore, they're not quite Kieselite in nature, but they still function as a bridge between the civilized men of the south and the truly depraved warriors of the north. Yes, they still venerate the dark gods, unlike the Kieselites, but they aren't bloodthirsty monsters. At least not usually. That makes the Bjornlings interesting in a way that the more generic Varg and Greylings can't easily replicate. Of course, from a Total War perspective, this may have been the wrong time to release this video. With the Tides of Torment DLC likely only a month or two away, the Bjornlings may receive an update alongside the rest of the Norscan factions. Considering the relatively small role they've played in the game so far, though, I'm not terribly worried about this video becoming super out of date. At the very least, the lore will remain mostly consistent. That's all I have for today, though. As always, thank you to my wonderful patrons, Emmy and Golden Gander. Your continued support is deeply appreciated. Until next time, this has been Sigmar is Chosen, signing off for now.